So I'm starting a record. These videos are going to be available later for others to be able to view if they didn't get to come to our session or if they were unable to make it this afternoon at all. So just to let you guys know that we will be recording the session. So we're going to start out real quick with introducing ourselves. My name is Rocky Forson with the University of Mississippi.
My name is Mallory Mazzarella. I'm with St. Edward's University in Austin.
My name is Sarah Broussard. I'm the Houston Regional Recruiter for Louisiana Tech University.
I think you're muted, Daniel. Do you want to try that one more time?
Yeah, that good old mute button. My name is Daniel Flores, and I'm representing EHL in Switzerland and Singapore.
You guys have a super wide variety of universities here to talk to today. So to start off, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're hoping to accomplish today. We're kind of hoping to hear from you guys and have you share with each other some of the things that you're finding that is changing about how virtual visits and FIT is figured out for our students. One thing that I always refer to whenever I talk about FIT is ice cream. So that's one of the graphics that I have on our opening slide. Just because my favorite flavor of ice cream is one thing doesn't necessarily mean that everybody likes that ice cream. My best friend may have a different flavor of ice cream. There are some ice creams that are very popular and lots of people get them. And there's some flavors of ice cream that are not as popular and you seek them out, or they're very hard to find or get into. So that there's a lot of different ways to kind of use that ice cream reference in ways talking about FIT. So just to open up with that, I'm going to pass it on to Sarah to talk about the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. So how is finding FIT different in this new COVID environment that we've now, this new reality that we have entered? So in our opinion, it's not too much different. Students can still ask all of their normal questions in remote ways. One huge benefit to this new environment that we're in is that students have such a greater accessibility to us admissions recruiters via Zoom. Also, a lot of campuses have implemented virtual visits. So whereas students may not, even before COVID, had been able to travel to a campus, they're able to visit a campus virtually. The biggest part that's missing is the campus visit and students being able to just kind of feel that, the on-campus feel. What is the culture of each campus that they're looking at? Whereas pre-COVID, college campuses were, bustling. Students are, they're in between classes. There's conversations going on. There's a sense of school pride that might not be as present anymore. So that's the biggest thing that's missing. And that's what I think each of our institutions are working our best to embody in a new virtual environment so students can kind of get that idea. But I'm going to pass it on to Mallory so she can kind of talk about some different aspects of FIT, of determining the perfect fit for a student.
Yeah, and so all of the aspects that we have listed on this slide are, dimensions of the college experience that you're probably used to discussing with your students. And so some of these might be explored in very similar ways to the way that you did previously, now that we're in a virtual world, and others may be pretty different or a little bit harder to learn more about. And so, something like campus size is campus size, but if you're visiting a school that is normally kind of a really bustling, in-person, high energy feel, and then they don't have as many students on campus as usual, that may feel very different to a student who's visiting. Or for a small school like St. Edward's, we do have some students on campus, but it feels really quiet right now, and there's normally a lot more energy, just because, when we're small and you make us kind of even smaller in an in-person format, it feels really different. Student involvement is one that I know that students are anxious about, and counselors may be anxious about as well. You may be hearing from students who are on campus currently kind of starting their freshman year who might be struggling with that a little bit, finding connection when people are remote and meeting in person is more challenging or more difficult. Cost and aid is one that I know is kind of top of mind for many families that might have been financially impacted by the pandemic. Programs of study is one that actually I think there's a little bit more opportunity to explore in a virtual format compared to in person. I know for us, at least, we've expanded the capacity of students to kind of talk directly to faculty or tune in virtually to presentations that are centered on particular programs or majors. Whereas previously that might have been something that you had to visit campus to get, or you needed to kind of email us in advance and set that up. So that's something that I think is more accessible now on many campuses. Location obviously hasn't changed for most students, but it can affect how COVID is doing locally might affect your ability to access that campus. Confusion about travel might make that harder too, and then the application process itself. So I see we have one question. Hello panel, do you have any suggestions for ways kids can connect with current students at your colleges so they can ask questions about campus life? This is a really big one. I think we've gotten this question in every session that we've done so far today. For us, we do currently have student-led synchronous live virtual tour options. So students can ask questions of a student and hear directly about their experience. And you can also reach out to the Office of Admission to be put in touch with a current student for a little bit more one-on-one kind of interaction. So we are doing our best to make that accessible because we know that peer connection is really important to a lot of students as they're exploring options. Do any of my colleagues want to add something?
I think also some universities are going to have a very good kind of program set up for things like this, and some may not. It never hurts to ask. If you're, empower your students to ask for the things that they need from us, because we can't always, it's very difficult for a very large institution to be able to set up a ton of these things, but there are times we know it's valuable. If you're asking for it, most of us at our universities are going to do what we can to make it happen for you.
So at Louisiana Tech, we do not have opportunities like this, but since it's been asked so many times in these sessions, I will definitely be asking our director of admissions about, ways we can set this up. And if a student does ask individually, if they ask me or another admissions recruiter for this opportunity, it's something we can definitely set up with our student recruiters because they're still giving tours on campus. So if a student's not coming to campus and they'd like to meet virtually and they would like that interaction with a student worker, that is something we would be more than happy to facilitate, I'm sure.
And at EHL, we partnered up with UniBuddies, so we have a set list of students from all over the world since we're an international school. So that way they can also kind of filter, if I'm from Finland and I want to talk to somebody from Finland, then they can do that. But we're still offering campus tours on a smaller scale. We do have student ambassadors on campus. So if anybody from Houston or just the US wants to get in touch with somebody, they can reach out to us and we could either directly put them in contact with students or we could facilitate it via email, whatever it is. So we're pretty flexible.
Other questions? Feel free to just come off mute and ask things outright if you want to, or if you're more comfortable typing things in the chat, that's fine too. But this is informal. Please ask questions however you feel most comfortable.
We know that things are crazy right now and that tons of people are, everything is being done via Zoom. I know I had probably 30 minutes off of Zoom meetings yesterday. And I know your students are probably feeling some of the same stuff if they're doing virtual learning and different things like that. I know that Zoom fatigue is a thing, and it's absolutely draining to have this going on and to keep your smile on and keep engaged and being engaging all day long. So are you finding any of your students are struggling with that aspect?
So really quick, I want to address, we had a question submitted in the chat here. How is demonstrated interest tracked in the virtual world? Do any of my co-presenters, do any of us track
I'm on it
demonstrated
right
interest?
now.
So I don't track demonstrated interest. Daniel, do you?
Yeah. Yeah,
Y'all
we're able
do?
to, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I know I sat on a, sorry, I talked over you. I know I sat on a panel with Rice yesterday, and they're very well known for the fact that they track demonstrated interest. So the way that they were putting it is anytime that they're doing things like this, they're tracking who's logging on to interact with them. When they are talking with students one-on-one or emailing or calling, they're tracking all of that stuff. In person is not necessarily required at this point, because it is something that we traditionally sort of that they would have as a part of the process, that in person is separate from virtual connections. Right now, they're all kind of flowing in the same bucket.
Yeah, and so I think, unfortunately, I don't know that we are able to kind of address your question fully, since I don't think our campuses are tracking that quite as much, but please reach out to campuses who do and ask that question. I'm sorry that we don't have a more comprehensive answer for you.
And to add on, I mean, it could be as simple as, we're able to see how many times somebody opens up an email or clicks on a link, if they've attended webinars, if they've attended, virtual school visits at this point. So we can track all of that. And it's every, I would say, university is a little different with how much weight they put on it. Sometimes it's just good to know that, oh, we met this person 3 years ago and then now they're applying. So there's been consistent interest, or it's, they just started requesting information 3 months ago, but they've attended all these different things. So it's, and that could be weighted more heavily on one university as opposed to another.
Other questions? Anyone at all, feel free to just come off mute or type in the chat. If we don't have any more questions, for kind of my co-presenters, do you want to just introduce a little bit of what some of those virtual visit options look like, talk about some of the things that your schools are doing, or anything that you want to highlight?
We did have another question that came through.
Oh, you're right.
So are one-on-one interviews becoming more popular at our schools? We're selective admissions at Louisiana Tech, so we don't implement interviews just based off of ACT and GPA. So I don't know for other institutions if y'all do have interviews. Now I do host one-on-one Zooms quite often, so I will say that that is a lot more popular. I do meet with students a lot more one-on-one, but it's by no means an interview process. The only program on our campus that does have an interview process is our professional aviation, and those interviews are done virtually via Zoom now. So.
And for EHL, we, because our process is also very selective, but because of our industry, it requires a lot of one-on-one interaction with people. We do have several phases where you could actually do interviews. The final phase is actually an interview with a mix of alumni and interns. Second one's a video interview where you're recording your response. But then we've consistently hosted one-on-one interviews. So whether nowadays, I mean, it's on Zoom, but even before then, we could connect students or families with current students or alumni to kind of get that information ahead of time.
Yeah, St. Edward's also does not use kind of a formal interview in the admission review process, but we do really appreciate the chance to talk to a student one-on-one. And it can help if a student is a little bit borderline in their application and they're able to make a really good impression in kind of that informal visit or one-on-one conversation. That can certainly help, and it might, strengthen their interest in the university and strengthen our impression of their ability to succeed. I will say I've heard from colleagues at places that do use formal interviews that they may be relying on those more heavily, especially in cases where they're maybe newly test optional. So that might be something to think about with kind of more selective options.
And I think that it's just about time for us to wrap up. Harn will be sending an email with resources next week, so look out for that. If you have any further questions, you can go back to the home or main room and you can ask those questions. But other than that, we've really enjoyed chatting with y'all and answering your questions. Thank y'all so much.
Do we want to go ahead and just close the session?
I think everyone has headed on out. I was watching it dwindle before we started chatting.
Got it. I think it was down to one.
Yeah, it was. She left.
All right, cool.
Oh, Rocky, you're on mute.
And you can stop the recording too.